harnessing trade for achieving SDG 2, and SDG 2 is a really important goal of the United Nations. It is to end hunger and all forms of malnutrition and ensuring sustainable resources at the same time. So it's a big question we have to talk about now. My name is Tanja Busse. I am a German author, a moderator, and a journalist, and I'm interested in agriculture, in ecology, in human rights, and so it's a great honor for me to be your moderator today. And I'm also pleased to announce you that the host of GFFA is going to open this high-level panel. As the German government is engaged in finding solutions to end hunger, every other year they are organizing the conference Policies Against Hunger, where they try to find best practices and solutions for SDG 2. And now I'm happy to welcome the State Secretary of the Federal Ministry of Food and Agriculture, Uwe Feiler. Welcome to our high-level panel. Thank you for coming.
Ja, sehr geehrter Herr Dr. Chu, sehr geehrter Herr Wolff, sehr geehrte Kolleginnen und Kollegen, Minister, Ministerinnen, Exzellenzen, sehr geehrte Damen und Herren, Sie haben mit Sicherheit jetzt hier jemand ganz anderes erwartet, und es war ja auch jemand anderes angekündigt, nämlich unsere Bundesministerin, aber die steht im Stau. Sie war eben noch im Plenum des Deutschen Bundestages, hat dort eine Rede gehalten, den agrarpolitischen Bericht gehalten, und wir haben in Berlin, wie Sie schon mitbekommen haben, ja auch die eine oder andere Demonstration zu laufen, und deswegen zeichnet unser Ministerium aus, nämlich Flexibilität. Ich habe vor 5 Minuten erfahren, dass ich schnell hier rüberkommen soll und statt der Ministerin hier sprechen darf. Das ist eine große Ehre und Freude für mich. Herzlich willkommen in Berlin, und ich freue mich, bei Ihnen sein zu dürfen. Allein 65 Länder, meine Damen und Herren, haben nicht ausreichend fruchtbares Land, um genug Nahrung für die eigene Bevölkerung zu erzeugen. Und die Konsequenz daraus ist, dass Handel betrieben werden muss. Der Abbau von Handelshemmnissen ist daher ein wichtiger Baustein zur Bekämpfung des Welthungers. Und er ist ein Schlüssel zur Friedenssicherung, denn Hunger ist einer der Gründe, warum Menschen sich auf die Flucht begeben. Und noch nie waren auf dieser Welt so viele Menschen auf der Flucht, derzeit rund mehr als 70 Millionen Menschen. Handel muss aber auch grenzenlos sein, und er darf nicht regellos sein. Wir brauchen regelbasierten Handel. Aber diese Regeln, meine Damen und Herren, müssen gemeinsame Regeln sein. Nicht ein Land alleine schafft diese Herausforderungen zu bewältigen. Es braucht uns alle gemeinsam dafür. Und seit der Gründung der WTO konnten marktverzerrende Subventionen nahezu halbiert werden. Und wenn wir den Hunger auf dieser Welt bekämpfen wollen, und wir müssen es nicht nur wollen, sondern wir müssen es tun, ist ein multilaterales, regelbasiertes, gleichberechtigtes Handelssystem unerlässlich. Und deswegen ist es auch eine der wichtigsten Anliegen beim GFFA, ein Zeichen für eine starke WTO zu setzen. Das heutige High-Level-Panel hier ist ein richtiger und wichtiger Schritt dazu. Ich wünsche Ihnen eine gute Diskussion, gute Ergebnisse und wünsche Ihnen weiterhin natürlich noch einen tollen Aufenthalt hier in Berlin auf der Grünen Woche. Schauen Sie sich alles an, tauschen Sie sich gemeinsam aus. Viel Erfolg dabei und Ihnen jetzt eine gute Diskussion bei diesem wichtigen Thema. Vielen Dank.
Thank you so much, Uwe Feiler, and he has given me a sign. He's even more flexible. He has other obligations, has to leave, might have to leave, but we thank you so much for coming here and being flexible and also telling us the reason why the minister herself couldn't come, because it's German farmers in the street. We also have their questions. We are going to address this later in the discussion, I think. So what we want to discuss here in this really high-level panel with a lot of expertise from all over the world is the question how trade can help to SDG 2, to end hunger and other forms of malnutrition. And the question is, the goal is still very far from being achieved because FAO says there are more than 820 million people in the world who still suffer from undernourishment, while at the same time 2 billion people do not have regular access to safe and sufficient and nutritious food. So we have at the same time a problem of people who not have enough to eat and other people who are facing diseases because they don't choose the nutritious food amidst of societies of affluence. So we are facing also other problems, which is, of course, climate catastrophe. It is going to change the map of agriculture in the world, and we still have a growing population. This means we have a lot of problems placed on this table that we want to discuss with you now. And we want to talk about 4 topics. We start with the connection between the combination of trade and food security. Then we want to address nutrition, also with the questions from you all here in the audience. And we want to address climate change, what can be done, always linking it with trade. And our last part is the question of digitalization, how it has to be used to help trade and food security to end and achieve SDG 2. So I would like to start general with the connection in general of food security and the end of hunger. And I would like to ask you, Minister Oumer Oba, you're the Minister of Agriculture of Ethiopia. And your country has a very long culture of the tradition of agriculture because Ethiopia is the home of coffee, a product that I guess all of you, nearly all of us are addicted to. And so you're the inventor of coffee ceremony. You have big potentials left for agriculture. There are a lot of investors who are interested in doing agriculture in Ethiopia. And at the same time, your country has been affected by severe security crisis. And I think the drought last year was really terrible for a lot of people in Ethiopia. So can you tell us about the role of international trade regarding food security and how you deal with this in Ethiopia?
Thank you very much. I think it's, you already mentioned, but it's good to see first what are the major causes of food security in developing nation. Not only Ethiopia, and a country like Ethiopia too. It's already mentioned, but I wanted to emphasize the challenge of population growth, which demand more consumption, more products, and hence. Other factor is also there about the lack of fundamentals in these developing countries, like the agriculture is very backward, it's not supported by technology, it's not capital intensive, it's not, it's about producing a big volume of crop or livestock products in larger area. It's not technology intensive. So, and hence it's also a rain fed. Irrigation is not to the level that we want. The soil structure is also in challenge, and it's not integrated in terms of marketing system also. These are some of the, apart from that, sometimes, the conflict in Africa because of different politics is also contributing to the area. Having said this, as you said, the food security in Ethiopia case, currently we have achieved the national food security, except that we are not doing good at the household level. Food security is not only nationally secure, but it has to be at the household level. We are not achieving that, and we are working towards that. A lot of activities have been undertaken yet. Currently we have a homegrown economic strategy, which is very good, and most of the African countries can also take as a showcase. We believe there is a potential, but we need to alleviate the challenge of the productivity, that every farmers are facing this time. If we solve the productivity problem in terms of both quantity and producing what the market needs, we can solve 2 things at a time. We believe we can solve 2 things. One, we can address the problem of food security, and also we can address the nutrition problem by producing what's demanded by the consumer at the end of the day. This is the way we are doing in our case. Apart from that, agriculture sector is prone for finance. I believe, and maybe many of you can suggest the same thing, agriculture is not well financed. We are not giving to agriculture what equivalent way to what we want from agriculture as well. We want a big thing from agriculture, but all over the world never equally understood and finance the sector from the whole production side to the marketing in the whole value chain in terms of infrastructure and digital information system as well. These are, I think, some of the areas in which we are acting, but to address this time my government is working to open up most of the area which is almost addressed by the government, public investment only for the private, by doing the ease of business doing, what Africans lack these days. So if we do this, I think we will address the issue of the SDG 2, and hence we are also working for international trade. It's all about the trade will be occur only if there is what to be traded there. Production must be there. Not only production as well. What's demanded in the world market must be there. In that manner, we are working on it. Maybe I don't believe that there are a lot of challenge which every one of us agreed upon. There must be rule, I agree, but the rule must not treat everyone equally, but in equivalent way, because the starting point for every country is not the same this time. What works for Africa does not exactly work for EU. There is a similarity. There are things in common, but that does not mean we have everything same. We need to, take some affirmative action for Africans who are lagging behind in terms of giving opportunity in terms of product, infrastructure, so that not only solving the African problem, and solving the world problem as well in supplying the food. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm very interested what you are going to tell afterwards, but first let me introduce you the other ministers on this table. Minister Zaha Waheed, you are the Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries, of course, of the Maldives, and your situation is quite different, as the Maldives in the Indian Ocean don't have huge area to produce crops, of course, but you produce fish, of course, and coconuts, but you have a very special situation. You need to import a lot of food for the huge number of tourists that come to the Maldives. You, Zaha Waheed, you're a marine scientist with a long list of publications, and you have a great experience already dealing with catastrophe, as you were in the team managing the Maldives when the tsunami hit the islands, so you already know what it's like working under extreme conditions, I think. Can you tell us about the role of international trade for your country, for a country that really heavily relies on imports?
Thank you very much. Maldives is a large ocean nation with less than 1% land. So that means 95% of the food is imported. Staples, pulses, grains, oils, whatever. And the only product which we produce is fisheries. We rely on fisheries, skipjack fisheries, and the yellowfin. So 70% of the protein which the locals eat comes from the consumption of fish. And when we look at the way the communities survive, fisheries is the main income-generating activity on the islands. That's the main livelihood. And most of the, around 15,000 fishers are active in the industry, and then we have about 8,000 to 10,000 farmers. In the situation in Maldives is very different. We have individual small islands scattered across the nation, geographic span, and then each island has to survive on its own. So one of the ways we can improve the livelihoods of the communities is through fishing and farming. So we are focusing on agriculture as well to make self-sustainable. So in terms of climate change, the impact is really happening. The global warming does impact our islands. The islands are being eroded. There's continuous flooding and frequent monsoons and frequent rains, which means the arable land, which the farmers do, agriculture is getting flooded. So that means the frequency of it is and does not allow the farmers to survive from one crop field rotation to the next. And then we are introducing modern technology like hydroponics and irrigation systems so that we do, as I mentioned, land is scarce, so we are doing we are inclining to do vertical agriculture so that we don't plant much in the ground, so it doesn't get the impact, reduces the impact. If you look at the agriculture, most of the imports is food substances, and then even for our community to survive, like we are geographically isolated, so the challenge of developing any sector is 6 times more much more costly than developing on a landlocked island. Like if we want to, like the experience which we had during the tsunami, all our fishers and farmers were affected and the communities did not have the food to be fed at. And then the World Food Programme and all the partners came in place and were able to help us out at the situation. But to transport goods, we need diesel as well. So we need to think about really economical ways of dealing with the transportation as well. So there are climatic issues as well. Mm. And when we talk about trade, I would like to say that international trade in fish and fisheries product is often assumed to be beneficial to everyone involved, like all the other kinds of commodity trade. But it can have negative impacts, and contrary to common understanding, it can result in food insecurity. In global fish trade, large volumes of fish are exported from the less developed or the developing countries to developed countries. And the benefits are more likely to be enjoyed by the more wealthy, already well-off segments of the population. This has to be taken into consideration when developing policies on increasing the improvement of trade and export in fisheries as well. Mm. Thank you.
Thank you very much for giving us this idea of climate change is already there, not something arriving, but it's already there. And again, we take also this remark on trade to both the WTO and the FAO. But first, I would like to introduce you to the Viceminister of Agriculture of Botswana, Beauty Manake. Thank you so much for coming here, for taking part in the discussion. And I'm also pleased because you're a farmer yourself. You studied agriculture and agricultural business in France and Brazil, and then you are a founder of a farm in Botswana. You're farming and you're connecting women in agribusiness all over Africa. So you're pushing forward maybe another perspective on agriculture, the female one. Can you tell us about Botswana, a rather small country with a population of 2.5 million people? What's the situation of food security and trade for Botswana?
Thank you very much, and let me take this opportunity to greet everybody here this afternoon. As you've already said, Botswana is a small country with about 2.3 million people, with an area which is an equivalent to France, but we're that small. We've got a lot of fertile arable land, and in some areas we do have some very good groundwater potential. So in terms of food security, we are still a bit in food insecure, but we have come up with policies that ensure that there is local production and people actually take up agriculture as a business. If I give an example, we've really started now with the policies that we have developed, or the government has developed, to focus on production of more nutritious food, especially to feed or to market it in the public sector. We have this primary school feeding program, which focuses on feeding primary students, because we've realized that plenty of times in most of the rural areas and remote areas of Botswana. Like we've mentioned, we're dispersed, we're everywhere, and most of the time we find out that some people are in very remote areas and availability of nutritious food is not is not easily accessible. So what we've done, we've come up with programs of empowering people to actually make food available so that the residents access it easily. And the focus is actually to produce nutritious food, which as a country we have the capability of producing. We're talking eggs, we're talking vegetables, which are easy to actually produce looking at the kind of erratic weather condition that we have. So we are now focusing and we are becoming very disruptive in terms of innovation to actually say the most important thing is for us to actually feed ourselves more than anything. How do we produce enough food that will feed Botswana and possibly actually export excess? But the focus now is let's feed Botswana first and sell the excess to other countries. And how do we actually do that? Like I'm saying, we have a lot of subsidies, we have a lot of initiatives which are promoting agricultural development, but it's still proved to be very difficult to actually have an outcome which is impactful and grows the sector. But it comes back to the disruption that I'm talking about, but which is very sustainable, not just the disruption of production, but we're coming up with very good models of disrupting the status quo and coming up with agri-parks and agri-villages, which will promote production of certain things where we have the capability. Because, like I said, we're a semi-arid country, so in other areas, it will not be easy to produce some things. And where we have a comparative advantage, we'll actually produce that. So we are not doing very bad in terms of food security, but we are still doing a lot to promote that.
Thank you so much for giving us an insight to Botswana. So let's go over to Canada and let's hear Chris Forbes, who's the Minister of Agriculture, the Vice Minister of Agriculture for Canada.
Did you almost give me a promotion?
Yeah, I give as a suggestion for Canada. But tell us about I guess the situation different from a tropical country in the Indian Ocean. Yeah. Give us an idea of your agriculture and your ideas of linking it to trade.
Yeah, thank you very much. Maybe a few points. I think I am a bit different, or Canada's a bit different, obviously, from some of the other colleagues around the table. We are a country that produces more food than we ourselves need, and so we do export this food around the world. Although I would note we are also a large importer of food, primarily from the United States and Mexico. Given our climate, there are certain foods we cannot grow in Canada that we import from around the world. So I maybe a couple of points, maybe to link back to a few things. I think as an exporter of food, and I actually really liked Minister Oba's comments about the importance of increasing productivity, innovation, because I think creating an environment, a climate where producers have certainty and can think about investing and growing over the longer term is, I think, particularly important in the context that we're facing right now of longer term climate challenges, population growth, and the overall SDG 2 challenge of feeding the world's population. So I think a climate where we can invest, innovate, and boost productivity around the world be critically important, I think, for all the countries around the table. And that, to me, turns back to the opening comments of our German host about the benefits of a predictable set of global rules, I think, for those of us that are exporting and those importing, I think, too, to understand the rules of the game and that they're clear and predictable. I just maybe add from a Canadian perspective, we're not immune to the challenges of food security. We certainly have that food insecurity in pockets in Canada, particularly in some of our newer immigrant communities and in some of our remoter Indigenous communities. These are challenges. And so we are working within Canada on a food policy that will strengthen local food infrastructure, bring more nutritious food to the plates of people around the country that might not have access to it now. So we're not immune to these challenges, and we have to find ways internally to improve the distribution and access to food.
Thank you so much, Chris Forbes. So after having had 4 insights in the situation of very different countries, I would like to put our discussion to the global level. And I would like to ask you, Mr. Alan Wolff, as the Deputy Director General of the WTO, having heard these different views and also having heard the idea of the trade does not only have to be free, but have to help countries that had less chances in the beginning, and also of the situation that trade might also have negative impacts. What are your ideas of trade of how trade could help food security be, well, the SDG to be achieved? Can you give us your ideas?
Thank you very much. This is a great forum, and I appreciate being here for the WTO. The first reason why a multilateral trade agreement was put into effect was to support peace back in 1947, and we tend to forget that, but there are 22 countries that are seeking admission to the WTO currently, and maybe a few more added to that, and a number of them are conflict affected, which is a general term, but it was very real for those countries. So Sudan, South Sudan, Somalia, Timor-Leste, the last two in were Afghanistan and Liberia. You don't have farming without stability. And so the connection between peace and trade is the notion that you raise the standard of living of your people and the chance for a future that's less conflict affected is enhanced. This is evident in very real terms. In coffee bushes require constant attention. If you're driven off, they don't do very well. And so you have to reestablish coffee in conflict-affected areas, which I'm sure the minister from Ethiopia knows. It's true also in Sudan. The food security also depends upon the availability of the world's supplies. So India suffers from too much water in one season and not enough water in another, and then a staple of the Indian diet, onions, becomes much less available, or disease breaks out in China and pork is not available, and you have to rely upon world supplies. So there needs to be agility. There needs to be the availability of supplies. So at a fundamental level, before we get to organic growth and the finer distinctions of food, you need food itself. And world trade gives that possibility. At a fundamental level, it creates a better allocation of resources, so there's more efficiency. And that contributes to farmer income. And at the consumer level, it gives availability and at affordable prices, and it creates the possibility of better nutrition, which I know we'll get to. It diversifies the supplies that are available. And what does the WTO do? It provides the rules under which trade takes place so that there are fewer distortions. They're not absent completely, but it brings fairness. And fairness for the farmer, fairness for the consumer, which is an absolute essential. So SDG 2, correcting trade distortions and restrictions. There's an attempt by 164 members of the WTO to, over time, reduce the interference with markets to allow for greater supplies, to have greater flexibility to serve the needs of food security for all.
Okay, before maybe coming back to your points, let us add the perspective of FAO, because FAO has always had a focus on the availability of food, and still we see we're very far away from achieving SDG 2. Dongyu, you're the Director General of FAO since last year, and you're also a scientist. You have a lot of experience with how to change, how to transform agriculture to fulfill SDG 2. So please give us your idea on the question, what the role of trade could be to help that these 820 million who are still hungry will have a better outcome in the next years.
Yeah, thank you, and I'm so glad to come back after exactly 1 year. Last time, it's on behalf of China, it's the largest population in the world. So listening carefully, each country has a different situation. So FAO work for 194 members. So we have to deal with all the different kind of situation among the memberships. And before we talk about trade, but of course for food security, at the 4 levels we are meaning. 4 dimensions of food security: availability, and Alan Wolff mentioned, and access, and stability and utilization. The trade can contribute to all those 4 aspects. But all those, they have a precondition. Each country, no matter Maldives, it's a small island, 1% of land which can be for agriculture, theoretically. Yeah, you don't have that land that can be for agriculture, even 1%. But Canada, they maybe have 30%, but north part it's so cold. Even you have a vast land. Yeah. So I think the availability based on the productivity, because by 2050, we still have more people to come. Will be 10 billion population. I hope not more than that, but it should be around 10 billion. Now it's 7.7. So in any case, in general, we need to increase the quantity. Based on the innovation, based on the efficiency of natural resource management, based on management and others, and market channel. Second, we need to make use of advantages in each different countries. Maybe Canada is good for the wheat, but definitely they couldn't produce the citrus because the natural climate is limited. But even in the United States, they have a tropical like China, and also you are not so ideal place to produce all the tropical products. So trade, in my opinion, first is share. Share the advantages across the country. If we don't have that mindset, concept in our mind, I always suggest my colleague, a friend from WTO, you create a common sense of value first. If we can share, and then how to share, and what kind of variety we are going to share. That's another, we have to change the way of thinking. And from point of view FAO, we want to help you, no matter Canada or Ethiopia or small island state like you, to improve efficiency, environment friendly, sustainably, and of course, it should be based on your own advantage of natural climate and resources. That's second, through the TCP, South-South cooperation, Triangle cooperation, North-South, any kind of partnership among the member countries. And third, also, we will ask all the UN agencies to work together, and our private sector work together, and also the academic people work together, and the civil society. That's why when I come to the office 1st of August, I proposed the hand-in-hand initiative. We are not only working among member of state, and also internationally with the WTO, with the WHO, ITU, UNIDO, and others. And then come to the private sector, and also the civil society, academic people. And then we can really focus on the vulnerable people in the vulnerable region, small island state, landlocked countries, you are from landlocked, you are from landlocked, and also least developed countries. That's those group, about 43 plus conflict countries, highly populated countries. It's about 53 countries. That's the first priority to change, to need help. And then we want to create the donor countries. No matter you're Ethiopia, in somehow you can share with other countries. Botswana, you are also donor. Yeah? So, and the recipient countries. So really focus on the priority of SDG 2 and SDG 1 and others. And we changed this business model. I'm so glad the European Union, they follow that. We are now starting a big project in Papua New Guinea. This is island, small island state, and with a big collective action to help them through the UN collective, EU collective action, together with FAO, UNDP, and others, and by coordination of residential coordinator of UN. So, and then we hope they can make real tangible, visible change in Papua New Guinea with 83 million. Because, and then you can really have some kind of deliverable results. So, doing so, I think FAO, we are willing to establish a new business model by hand-in-hand initiative, and also to work together with other organizations, even within Africa. Now they have a free trade zone, already officially launched last May. How to work together with WTO through the Codex, reduce the barrier across the country, and we need the donor countries, no matter OECD or other countries, willing to help, facilitate them to make the within continent more accessible for trade. Trade is one of the purchase power, can be used to speed up, short the gap between the shortage countries and overproduced countries in commodity based, not only in general sense. We should be based on the commodity based. And for Canada, you are shortage of citrus, you are overproduced of oil, rapeseed, canola, you are on there. So, and you can export and sometimes share with your purchase power to help the poor countries that can raise their income, and SDG 1 to improve livelihood in developed nations. So if we're willing to cover all audience here, I think to make SDG speed up solved. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for pressing, giving pressure on the collaboration. And I think we all on this table, we do agree we don't want countries to say trade is my country first. I think we agree on this idea. Still, in the invitation to this year's GFFA, the German minister Julia Klöckner said, she said we have to find a solution also to avoid unfair distribution of trade. So, and this would also be important for lots of smallholder farmers who don't have a direct link in producing crop commodities for world markets. And you mentioned that the trading with fish sometimes does not affect your country in a good side. So do you have any ideas on how to react on this unfair distribution of trade? Do you have any ideas?
Well, go ahead, please.
Go ahead for it. To the Maldives and then to the WTO.
I think the strengthening trade policies at the border and beyond the border should be taken into consideration. In free trade, there are likely to be significant differences between the impacts of small-scale and larger nations, and when it comes to trading fish, like there are taxations levied on different countries. For us, like when we are exporting to European Union, we are taxed at 28%, while we are one of the cleanest and greenest fishery which exists in the, we are doing a skipjack fishery by pole and line, one by one we catch, and it's the cleanest and greenest, but when it comes to exporting at the exporting countries, we are taxed at 28%, while other countries which are doing the same fishery, not as environmentally friendly as us, but still they are not taxed at their 0% taxation. So being a small nation and trying to import food from the revenue which is generated to the country, it puts a lot of pressure on us as well. Like in Maldives, the main income is generated from the tourism industry because the natural beauty is what attracts the people to the Maldives. So that's where the food is purchased on the balance sheet through that. So all the development is taking place at the cost of the environmental. So what I'm trying to say is that so when we are clean and green, we should be given that advantage for us to be able to compete in a competent market. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Maybe we can link this to the German farmers who are demonstrating in the street right now, who made it impossible for the German minister to come here, because they say they are facing law which tells them to protect water more effectively, and they say when we do so, our prices will raise, and they face the same problems. So they want a connection between trade and environmental standards. So maybe what are your ideas about the solution to this? Also to your question of fishery and tariffs. That make, well, different playing fields.
Maybe I can take this. Okay. You know, for improve the agricultural production and the efficiency, that's the old approach. You only wanted to get a high efficiency, high productivity. But now we have to balance the productivity and environment friendly, no matter you're from developing nation, from Europe, or from North America. I said several times, better production. Better production is not only increase the yield, and also you have to consider the side effect of the environment for water. Yesterday I had a talk with a friend from Moldova. If you are suffering from a shortage of the water scarcity, it's not proper to produce more milk, because one cow consumes 8 people's water consumption a day. So that means one cow equals 8 people in the city, because 92% are water. So you have to revisit your industry of agriculture from crop, water saving, water efficient crops, and also animal husbandry. And for meat consumption also. Now a lot of people talk about the beef. It depends on the region. If you have enough water, enough grassland, it's okay. But if you don't, you use the animal feed. 6 to 7 kilos of animal feed produce 1 beef. And with the same, you can produce at least 3 kilos of chicken. So I'm not against the beef, but you have to think aware of your life. And then you build up more scientifically, environment-friendly production to each sector, you name it. So that's one. Second, also, for here, also the water prices. Because it used to be any country in the world, the farmer don't pay price of the water. When I was a local government in China, I introduced a water price. At the beginning, it was really against by the farmers, because they used to freely for years, 1,000 years. Now I say, we have to, because for our future generation. And then we introduced the pricing system for water, for industry, for citizens. And then we use the beneficial water price high in the city to help the farmers to improve their engineering and to improve their facility. So that's also sharing among the different sectors for water. So a lot of policy also you need to change. And also you have to develop new technology. And also marketing system by digital. By digital, you can save the cold chain system and more efficient. Because any time you waste during the process of a cold chain system, you ask the consumer to pay. And you create a lot of garbage. And finally, you pay for the environment. So I just have to restructure, transform.
And have a longer life cycle assessment and combine both ideas. So let's talk about...
just add an example.
Okay, very briefly, because we come to nutrition and climate change and digitalization. Mr. Wolff, add an example.
Cotton development assistance. There are many countries that are dependent very much on cotton. they seek assistance, particularly the countries of West Africa, and all the countries that are in the cotton, but whether they buy cotton or they make cotton, they are very responsive. Why is that connected to the environment? Because if they improve not only their yields, but their practices, there'll be less pesticides used and less fertilizer used. So it's environmentally friendly, and the waste that currently exists in byproducts, that where the seed and the oil are not yet usable as feed or food, can be made available as feed and food with technology. And what is necessary, as the Director General knows, is information. That on the web, any farmer can find out how to improve their productivity and reduce the impact on the environment of how they grow things. So there are practical examples in many, many areas of the linkage between not just efficiency, but the green objectives that the Minister cited.
Thank you. Let's come to the topic of nutrition. You have already mentioned that a lot of all you as countries care about nutrition, and the problem is a complex one, because for many years we used to talk about hunger and famine, but now experts in public health are addressing the triple burden of malnutrition, saying there are, sometimes in the same countries, there are a lot of people who simply don't have enough to eat, but